everyone, and welcome to the show. I was thinking about this the other day, and it really kind of hit me. You know how sometimes it feels like you're working so hard to make ends meet, but your money is just like, I don't know, disappearing?
Yeah, totally. Like it's
Yeah.
just slipping through your fingers no matter how much effort you put in.
Right. It's like there's this invisible drain somewhere just
Hmm.
sucking away your hard-earned cash. And you know what? Turns out we're not alone in feeling that way.
Oh,
Because in this deep dive, we're going to be tackling that very issue.
sounds intriguing.
We're going deep into Kalyn Brooke's book, 31 Days to Radically Reduce Your Expenses.
Okay.
And for you listeners, those of you who might be rolling your eyes thinking, oh, great, another lecture on cutting back on lattes. I promise you, this is different.
How so?
This book is not about deprivation. It's not like suddenly you have to give up everything you enjoy to get ahead. It's really more of a practical guide, a kind of like personal finance boot camp that's spread out over 31 days.
Ooh, I like that, breaking it down into manageable steps.
Exactly. It's all about making mindful, I don't want to say small, but like strategic adjustments that, in the grand scheme of things, can really free up a lot of money. So by the end of it, you'll hopefully have more resources, more flexibility for the things that, really matter to you.
I'm all for that. Who wouldn't want more financial breathing room?
Absolutely. So today, we're going to be extracting those key strategies from Kalyn's book, those like golden nuggets of wisdom you can put into practice right away.
Right? The actionable stuff, the tips and tricks that actually make a difference.
Absolutely. We want to make sure that you, the learner, can, reduce your expenses, get a handle on your money without feeling like you're being choked by a budget, right?
Yeah, no one wants to feel like they're constantly sacrificing and missing out.
Exactly. So if you're ready to breathe a little easier financially, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and let's dive right in.
Let's do it.
Okay, so first things first, why bother? Why is it so important to really take a good, hard look at our expenses?
Well, as Kalyn points out, it's really easy for spending to just sort of creep up on us without even realizing it?
It's so true. It's like death by a thousand cuts, but with your bank account.
Uh-huh, exactly. It's those little things like maybe you signed up for a new streaming service or, maybe you got tempted by a free trial that turned into a paid subscription.
Ugh, tell me about it. Those free trials are so sneaky.
They really are. But it's also like those online purchases that just kind of seem small at the time, but they all add up. And before you know it, they're taking a huge chunk out of your monthly budget.
Yeah, and that's a really important point because as those little expenses pile up, they start to eat away at the money that we could be using for bigger things.
Right, like saving for a down payment on a house or maybe investing for retirement or building that emergency fund just in case.
Oh, and let's not forget about those unexpected opportunities that might come up. Like if you suddenly need to travel or help a family member, but you're already stretched thin.
Totally. And to illustrate this point, Kalyn actually shares a personal story that I think a lot of people can relate to. She talks about this time when she had a whole bunch of unexpected home repairs all happen at once.
Oh no, what happened?
Well, her water heater broke, she needed new tires for her car, and she had a leaky faucet that just wouldn't stop dripping.
Oh wow, talk about a triple whammy.
Exactly. And it really hit her that, if her income was already stretched thin from regular expenses, those kinds of unexpected costs could be really stressful and make it feel impossible to get ahead.
That's like you're always putting out fires.
Right. It's like you're on this financial treadmill, constantly running but going nowhere.
Yeah, perfectly put. And this brings up a really crucial point that Kalyn makes, and it is that we need to make our necessary expenses, those bills we absolutely have to pay, as stress-free as possible.
It's like that saying, take care of the pennies and the pounds will take care of themselves, right? But in this case, it's take care of your necessary expenses and the wants and dreams will have room to breathe. Yeah, exactly. It's about creating that solid foundation so you can actually start thinking about those bigger goals and aspirations.
So is she saying we all just need to make more money?
Well, it's not quite as simple as that. While earning more is certainly helpful, Kalyn argues that a lot of times we overlook the power we have to improve our finances simply by managing what we already have better.
You mean like being smarter with the money that's already coming in?
Precisely. It's about shifting our mindset from feeling helpless in the face of our expenses to taking control and becoming the manager of our own money.
I like that, taking ownership of our finances instead of letting them control us.
Right. And it's amazing how much we can save when we start to scrutinize those recurring expenses that we just kind of accept as fixed. Kalyn puts it really well. She says, a surprising amount of our money washes away simply because we accept the prices we're paying without question.
I feel like I'm definitely guilty of that, just paying bills on autopilot without really thinking about it.
I think we all do that sometimes. But the good news is we have more power than we realize to actually lower those costs.
Okay, so what kind of savings are we talking about here? Can we actually make a significant difference just by being more mindful of our expenses?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Kalyn gives some really encouraging examples. She talks about how you could potentially cut around $75 a month off your grocery bill, maybe save $40 by switching to a different phone carrier, or even reduce your car insurance by $25 just by making a quick phone call.
Those don't sound like huge amounts on their own, but when you add those kinds of savings up across multiple areas of your budget.
Exactly. That's when it starts to make a real impact on your overall financial picture.
So it sounds like what she's saying is that financial freedom isn't some far-off dream that only a select few can achieve.
Right. It's an achievable goal, and this 31-day process is like a roadmap to help you get there.
I love that analogy, a roadmap to financial freedom. Okay, so we've talked about why it's important to get a handle on our expenses. Now let's get down to the nitty-gritty. What are some of the specific areas where we can start cutting costs?
Well, I think it makes sense to start with what's often the biggest expense for most people, housing. And that includes both mortgages and rent.
Makes sense, tackling the big one first. So, for homeowners with a mortgage, what are some of Kalyn's tips for reducing those costs?
Well, one of the things she emphasizes is that even small, consistent actions can make a huge difference over time. For example, she talks about the power of making just one extra principal payment on your mortgage each year.
Wait, just one extra payment a year?
Yep, just one. And it's surprising how much of an impact that can have. She gives this really compelling example. Let's say you have a $150,000 mortgage at 4.5% interest over a 30-year term.
Okay, sounds pretty standard.
Right. So your monthly payment would be about $760. And over the entire life of the loan, you'd end up paying over $273,000.
Wow, that's a lot of interest.
Right. But here's the thing. If you make just one extra principal payment of $760 each year, you can actually shorten the life of your loan by over 4.5 years.
Seriously, just by making one extra payment a year.
Yep. And not only that, you'll save yourself over $22,500 in interest.
Okay, that's pretty incredible. But I'm guessing most people don't just have an extra $760 lying around to throw at their mortgage every year.
Well, Kalyn suggests a really practical way to do this without breaking the bank, making biweekly payments. That way you're essentially making one extra full payment over the course of a year.
Oh, that's smart. So you're not really feeling the pinch as much.
Exactly. And another thing she mentions is private mortgage insurance, or PMI, which a lot of homeowners have to pay if they bought their house with a down payment of less than 20%.
Right, because the lender wants to protect themselves in case the borrower defaults on the loan.
Exactly. And PMI can add a significant amount to your monthly payment, sometimes as much as $50 to $100 or even more. But here's the thing. A lot of lenders won't automatically remove PMI once you've built up enough equity to hit that 20% threshold.
So you have to keep track of it yourself and make sure they take it off.
Exactly. It's important to be proactive and stay on top of that so you're not paying PMI unnecessarily. Kalyn even mentions keeping a reminder attached to her mortgage documents so she doesn't forget.
That's a great idea.
And then for homeowners who are really serious about radically reducing their housing costs, she talks about more dramatic options like downsizing to a smaller house or even considering alternative housing arrangements like mobile homes or tiny houses.
Wow, those are definitely big decisions.
They are. But for some people, especially those who are really committed to paying down debt quickly, those options can be a game changer.
It's about aligning your housing choices with your overall financial goals.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about renters? Do they have any options for saving money on housing costs?
Absolutely. Kalyn points out that a lot of people don't realize that rent is often negotiable.
Really? I always thought rent was pretty much set in stone.
Well, it can depend on a lot of factors, like the local rental market and the specific landlord or property manager you're dealing with. But she advises doing some research, checking online platforms like Zillow and Trulia to get a sense of what comparable properties are renting for in your area.
Okay, so you do your homework and then approach your landlord armed with data.
Exactly. You can present your findings and make a case for why you think your rent should be lower.
That's pretty smart, but I'd be nervous about pushing too hard and then getting kicked out.
That's a valid concern, which is why Kalyn recommends having a 30-day notice ready just in case. It shows that you're serious, but it also gives you a safety net.
Good advice.
And another strategy she suggests is exploring the possibility of signing an extended lease, maybe for 2 or 3 years, in exchange for a lower monthly rent.
Oh, I like that. It gives the landlord peace of mind knowing they have a reliable tenant for a longer period.
Exactly. And Kalyn actually speaks from experience here because she's a landlord herself. She knows that finding good long-term tenants is valuable, and she might be willing to offer a discount to secure that stability.
That's a great insider tip. Anything else renters should keep in mind?
Well, when you're comparing rental costs, it's important to look beyond just the base rent amount.
Hmm.
Make sure you factor in all the additional expenses that might be included, like utilities, cable, or access to amenities.
Right, because those things can really add up.
Absolutely. And even though it's an extra cost, Caitlin also recommends renter's insurance as a way to protect yourself against potential losses from things like theft or natural disasters.
That's a good point. It's better to be safe than sorry, especially when it comes to your belongings. Okay, so we've covered the big one, housing. What's next on the expense reduction list?
Well, let's move on to something that can cause a lot of stress for homeowners: home repairs.
Ah, yes, those unexpected costs can be a real budget killer.
Absolutely. And Kaylin acknowledges that. But she's also a big advocate for the empowering potential of DIY repairs.
DIY repairs.
Yeah. She points out that there are so many great resources available online now, like YouTube tutorials and articles that can walk you through a surprisingly wide range of repairs.
I've definitely used those myself for some minor plumbing issues around the house.
Right. And it can save you so much money compared to calling a professional every time something goes wrong.
That's true, but I think it's important to know your limits too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Kaylin emphasizes that as well. She suggests asking yourself some key questions before tackling any DIY project, like, do I actually have the skills to do this? How much time will it realistically take? What tools will I need? And can I borrow or rent them? How confident am I that I can actually complete this project successfully? And finally, how difficult is this project according to, my online research?
Those are some great questions to ask yourself. I mean, you don't want to end up making things worse and then having to call a professional anyway.
Exactly. It's about knowing when to DIY and when to call in the experts.
So aside from DIY repairs, what other tips does she have for managing those unexpected home repair costs?
Well, one of the most important things is to have a dedicated emergency fund specifically for those kinds of expenses.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're not caught off guard when something inevitably breaks.
Exactly. And it's a good idea to keep a list of trustworthy local contractors on hand so you know who to call when you do need professional help.
That's a great tip. I'm definitely adding that to my to-do list.
And finally, she suggests creating a home maintenance checklist for preventative care so you can catch small issues before they turn into big, expensive problems.
Okay, moving on from the everyday costs of owning a home, let's talk about those bigger purchases that, while they don't happen every month, can still put a dent in our budgets.
You're talking about those big ticket items, as Kellen calls them: furniture, major appliances, things like that.
Exactly. So what does she recommend for handling those larger purchases?
Well, she stresses the importance of being intentional and planning ahead. She suggests creating a household wish list for those items and setting up a dedicated savings account specifically for those purchases.
That's a good idea. It helps you avoid impulse buys and really think about whether you need something before you spend money on it.
Exactly. And then she shares some really practical strategies for getting those big-ticket items at a lower cost. For example, she's a big fan of diligently searching Craigslist, especially the owner listings.
Oh yeah, Craigslist can be a goldmine for used furniture and appliances.
Absolutely. But she emphasizes the importance of asking detailed questions before arranging to meet the seller, like getting exact measurements, model numbers, whether the item comes from a smoke-free home, and how old it is. And of course, she stresses the need for safety during those in-person exchanges.
Right, always meet in a public place and bring a friend if possible.
Exactly. And she includes a reader tip about setting up alerts for specific items you're searching for so you don't have to constantly be checking the site.
That's a great idea.
And don't forget about used goods retailers, like thrift stores, consignment shops, and flea markets. Those can be great places to find furniture, often for a fraction of the cost of buying new.
And sometimes you can find some really unique pieces that you wouldn't find anywhere else.
Exactly. But Kaylin also acknowledges that it's okay to save up and pay full price for something you really want. But the key is to budget for it, just like any other expense.
So it's all about making conscious choices, not just buying things on a whim.
Precisely.
Okay, let's switch gears now and talk about home insurance. It's not the most exciting topic, but it is essential for homeowners.
Absolutely. And Kalyn addresses the misconception that eliminating home insurance is a good way to save money.
Yeah, I can see why some people might think that, especially if they're on a tight budget.
Right. But she points out that most standard policies already operate at the lowest permissible coverage limits, and a lot of protections are bundled together. So it's not as simple as just dropping your insurance altogether.
So what does she suggest for lowering those premiums?
Well, one option is increasing your deductible. That usually results in a lower monthly premium, but it does mean you'll have to pay more out of pocket if you need to file a claim.
Right, so you have to weigh the risks and benefits.
Exactly. And she also strongly recommends asking about all the available discounts,
Discounts, like what?
like bundling your home and auto insurance with the same provider, having certain safety features installed in your home, loyalty discounts for long-term customers, and even discounts based on professional affiliations or memberships.
Wow, I didn't know about some of those.
It's worth asking. And she also suggests having an independent insurance agent shop around for you, as they can often access a wider range of policies and potentially find better rates.
That's a great tip.
And finally, she stresses the importance of conducting an annual policy review before your renewal date to ensure that you're still getting the best possible rate and that your coverage levels still meet your needs.
Okay, good to know.
And then moving on to another major expense category, cars.
Oh, yes. Car expenses, the gift that keeps on giving. Ha ha.
Exactly. We've got the fluctuating gas prices, the unpredictable repairs, and the insurance, all adding up to a significant chunk of our budgets. So where do we even begin?
Let's start with the one that's been hitting everyone's wallets lately, gas prices. What does Kalyn suggest for minimizing those costs?
Well, one of the most obvious things is to simply drive less if you can.
Easier said than done for some people, right?
True. But she suggests things like telecommuting, if your job allows, carpooling with colleagues or family members, and consolidating your errands into fewer trips.
Like that reader tip we saw from Julia in Minnesota about just staying home more and making a list of all the errands you need to run, then doing them all in one go.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing how much time and money you can save by just being more strategic about your driving. And for those who live in walkable or bikeable areas, she encourages choosing those modes of transportation whenever possible. Not only does it save on gas, but it's good for your health too.
Two birds with one stone, I like it.
And then, of course, there's the importance of being a savvy gas shopper.
Which can be a bit of a headache with prices changing all the time.
Definitely. But she recommends using an app like Gas Buddy to track prices and find the best deals in your area.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that app.
And she mentions that Warehouse Club gas stations often have lower prices, although you have to factor in the membership fee.
Right, but if you already have a membership, it could be worth it.
Definitely. And don't forget about those gas rewards programs offered by grocery stores and some gas stations.
Oh, yeah, like those ones where you get points for every gallon you buy.
Exactly. Those can add up over time. And then there are gas-specific credit cards that offer cash back. But she emphasizes the importance of using those responsibly and paying your balance in full each month to avoid interest charges.
Solid advice. Any other tips for maximizing fuel efficiency?
Well, she briefly mentions things like keeping your tires properly inflated and using the manufacturer's recommended type of motor oil.
Okay, those are good reminders. And in the long run, maybe even consider a more fuel-efficient vehicle if that's an option.
Absolutely. All right, so moving on to the part that nobody likes talking about, car repair.
Ah, yes, those inevitable but often unwelcome expenses.
Exactly. Kalyn emphasizes the importance of finding a trustworthy and reputable mechanic. She suggests asking friends and family for recommendations and checking online reviews.
It's definitely worth taking the time to find a good mechanic who you can trust.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to ask questions. She includes this great reader tip from Derek in Michigan about proactively asking your mechanic if there are any less expensive ways to fix a problem.
I love that, being an informed consumer.
Right. And it's always a good idea to be on the lookout for coupons for auto repair services, whether they come in the mail or you find them online.
Coupons are always a good thing.
Then she mentions repairpal.com as a helpful resource for getting an idea of what different repairs should cost in your area. That way, you can make sure you're not being overcharged.
That's a great website. I've used it before.
Right. And she even suggests exploring the option of buying parts online and then just paying your mechanic for the labor.
Oh, that could save a lot of money. Where would you even buy car parts online?
There are a bunch of websites like Craigslist, eBay, even specialized sites like justparts.com.
Wow, I had no idea.
And don't forget about those local auto wrecking yards. Lindsay in Washington sent in a great tip about that.
Oh, yeah. You can often find used parts in good condition for a fraction of the price.
Exactly. And for some families, she even brings up the possibility of going down to a one-car household if their situation allows for it.
That's a big lifestyle change, but
Right.
it could be a significant cost saver for some people. Okay, last but not least, in the car expense category, we have car insurance.
Ugh, another one of those necessary evils, right?
It really can feel that way, especially when you see those monthly premiums. But we all know how important it is to have it.
Definitely. But as with any insurance, it's important to review your policy regularly and make sure you're getting the best possible rate.
So, are there any ways to actually lower those premiums?
Absolutely. Kalyn suggests a few different things. First, she says to carefully evaluate your coverage and see if there are any areas where you can adjust it.
Like what?
Well, maybe you could drop non-essential add-ons like rental reimbursement or roadside assistance if you have alternative coverage for those things.
Okay, that makes sense.
But she strongly advises against reducing your liability coverage without talking to an insurance professional first.
Right, because that's the coverage that protects you if you cause an accident and injure someone else.
Exactly. And the age and value of your car also play a role in deciding how much collision and comprehensive coverage you need.
Okay, I got it.
And just like with home insurance, increasing your deductible can lower your monthly premium, but you need to be prepared to pay that higher deductible if you have an accident.
Right, so you need to have a solid emergency fund to cover that.
Exactly. It's a good short-term solution if you're really strapped for cash, but it's not a long-term strategy.
Good point.
And Callan lists a bunch of discounts that you should ask about.
Oh, discounts. I love discounts.
Me too. So there are discounts for things like low annual mileage, having certain safety features in your car, good grades for student drivers, going paperless with your statements, and participating in those driving rewards programs.
Those are great. I never even thought to ask about those.
And we got this great reader tip from an insurance agent warning that some cashback incentives might actually end up costing you more in the long run.
Oh, really? That's sneaky.
Right. So always read the fine print and do your research.
Good advice. Anything else?
Well, the most important thing is to shop around and compare quotes from at least 3 different companies. Get a sense of what's out there and don't just settle for the first quote you receive.
That's a good reminder. It's like insurance companies are businesses and they want your business, so you have a bit of leverage there.
Exactly. Callan even shared a personal anecdote about how she saved over $135 on her 6-month policy just by taking the time to get quotes from other companies.
That's significant. And remember, everyone, the cheapest option isn't always the best. Consider factors like customer satisfaction and the company's reputation for handling claims fairly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And don't feel pressured to make a decision right away. Take your time, weigh your options, and choose a company that feels like the best fit for you.
Okay, I'm feeling much more empowered about my car insurance now.
Good.
Yeah.
Because feeling in control of your finances is what it's all about.
Totally. Okay, let's move on to a category that's probably near and dear to everyone's hearts. Groceries.
Yes. The never-ending quest to feed ourselves and our families without breaking the bank.
Especially with food prices being what they are these days.
It can be really challenging, and Kalyn acknowledges that. But she offers a lot of practical tips for saving money on groceries and making healthy eating more affordable.
Okay, I am all ears. Give me those grocery saving secrets.
Well, her first tip is to shop your pantry before you even go to the store. Take a good look at what you already have on hand and see if you can create meals using those ingredients.
I think I'm guilty of not doing that enough.
I think we all are. But it's amazing how much food waste we can avoid and how much money we can save by just taking stock of what we already have.
It's like uncovering hidden treasures in the back of your pantry.
Exactly. Kalyn even shares a personal story about how she was able to come up with 7 extra dinners just by being more mindful of what she already had in her kitchen.
7 extra dinners, that's impressive.
Right. And she provides some helpful examples of ingredient pairings that can form the basis of simple meals. For example, if you have ground beef, you can make sloppy joes. If you have canned soup, you can make grilled cheese and tomato soup.
Those are classics.
And there are tons of other ideas like that. She even suggests using a Shop Your Stock worksheet, which listeners can find linked in the show notes.
That's super helpful.
And then another important tip is to focus on making budget-friendly meals.
Like meals that don't require a ton of fancy ingredients.
Exactly. Aim for recipes that cost less than $1 per serving and use basic seasonal ingredients whenever possible.
That makes sense.
And Pinterest is a great resource for finding budget-friendly recipe ideas. She also recommends checking out frugal foodie blogs for inspiration.
Okay, noted. What about leftovers? Any tips for dealing with those?
Oh, absolutely. Kalyn is a big advocate for using leftovers creatively. She suggests repurposing them into new meals, like turning leftover meat into sandwiches or salads, or using mashed potatoes to make pancakes.
Those are some clever ideas. I usually just end up reheating leftovers in the microwave.
Yeah, but she suggests reheating them on the stovetop or in a convection oven for a better taste and texture.
Okay, I'll have to try that.
And then for bigger savings, she recommends checking out discount grocery stores like Aldi and Save a Lot. You might need to try different brands to find what you like, but the prices can be significantly lower.
I've heard great things about Aldi, but I haven't been there yet.
It's definitely worth checking out. And she also mentions those discount bread stores and scratch and dent grocery stores, which can have amazing deals.
Scratch and dents, like dented cans and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. They might not be the prettiest, but the food inside is perfectly good,
Uh,
and you can save a lot of money.
I'll have to keep an eye out for those. All right, moving on from groceries, let's talk about another big food expense. Eating out.
Oh, yeah, eating out. It can be such a budget buster, especially with restaurant prices being what they are these days.
I know, and it's so tempting to just go out to eat, especially when you're tired or busy.
I totally get it.
Yeah,
But Kellen emphasizes the importance of making eating at home more enjoyable, so you're less tempted to dine out all the time.
that makes sense. Any tips for making home-cooked meals more appealing?
Well, she suggests things like switching up your meal plans, trying new recipes, or even recreating your favorite restaurant dishes at home. You can often find copycat recipes online.
Oh yeah, there are tons of those on Pinterest.
And don't forget about discounts. Look for printable coupons, check for mailed coupons, explore those daily deal websites, and even save your restaurant receipts for survey coupons.
Those are all great reminders.
And when you do eat out, be strategic. Maybe share an appetizer instead of ordering a whole entree, or split an entree with a friend. And at fast food places, you can often share a large order of fries.
She even includes a reader tip from Jennifer in Michigan about families having their kids share adult meals to save money.
Yeah, that's a good one. And for families with younger kids, there are often Kids Eat Free promotions at restaurants. Websites like mykidseatfree.com can help you find those deals.
Perfect for families on a budget. And of course, don't forget about those restaurant rewards programs.
Right. Signing up for those can lead to freebies, discounts, and other perks.
It's all about making the most of those opportunities to save. All right, let's shift gears now and talk about utilities. Those can be a big expense, especially for homeowners.
Absolutely. We've got water, electricity, cable, internet, and phone services all contributing to that monthly bill.
And let's be real, they're not exactly getting any cheaper. So, what does Kalyn recommend for reducing those utility costs?
Well, let's start with water bills. Sometimes it can feel like you have no control over them.
Especially if you live in an area with water restrictions or have a large family that uses a lot of water.
Right. But she actually has some great tips for reducing your water usage.
Like what?
Well, she suggests being more mindful of your water use in the bathroom, like taking shorter showers or turning the water off while you're brushing your teeth or soaping up.
Those are good habits to get into.
And she also recommends upgrading to low-flow shower heads and toilets.
Those can make a big difference.
Right. And it's important to fix any leaks as soon as you notice them, no matter how small they seem.
She actually shares an anecdote about getting a $320 water bill because of a leaky toilet that they didn't realize was so bad.
Yeah, so those little drips can really add up over time.
Yikes.
And then, for appliances, she recommends choosing Energy Star certified dishwashers and washing machines because they're designed to use less water and energy.
So you're saving money and being more environmentally friendly at the same time?
Exactly. And speaking of energy, let's talk about electricity bills.
Okay, those can be a real pain, especially during those hot summer months when the air conditioner is running nonstop.
Right, and Kellen acknowledges that. But she emphasizes that we actually have more control over our electricity usage than we might think.
Really? Like, what can we do?
Well, she suggests adjusting your thermostat, even by a few degrees, when you're away from home or asleep.
That makes sense. No need to heat or cool an empty house.
Exactly. And you can use curtains and blinds to help regulate the temperature, and you could even use weather stripping and foam pads around doors and windows to prevent drafts. Host speaker.